I hit 200 subscribers. I know I probably should be more excited. I should jump, I should scream, I should have a party maybe, but to be honest, I'm not that big of a YouTuber, so 200 subscribers is pretty impressive. Just, it's whatever. It's not gonna get me money, so oh well. Still, 200 subscribers. That means there are 200 people in the world who actually want to watch my videos. I honestly really should be impressed by that. Anyway, I thought a lot about what I should do for this special, and there are a lot of things I could do. I could analyze throughout my entire channel. I can analyze throughout my entire childhood, or I could do it simply by talking about my favorite movies again. Let's do that, yeah. So for today's 200 subscriber special, I'm going to be sharing with y'all my list of my all-time favorite movies currently. But not just my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Not even just my top 20 favorite movies of all time. How about my top 100 favorite movies of all time? Which should take a while, so how am I going to do it? Well, easy. I'm only going to be spending less than 10 minutes with each one, because otherwise I would make a super long video and I don't do that. So I'm going to be going through my top 100 all-time favorite movies at the moment and only spend less than 10 seconds with each one. I'll see if I can do that, and we'll get through it, and hopefully it doesn't change too soon to where I'm going to regret this list. So let's get started. Taika Waititi is hilarious. Thor is a pretty awesome person. Even if people don't agree now, Thor Ragnarok is still funny and exciting. And then there's the one that started it all, Iron Man, the birth of the MCU. God, it always makes some exciting stuff. Good old Men in Black. While Will Smith may not be exciting nowadays, this movie was pretty fun. It has fun moments, lots of fun aliens, it's all that good stuff. Mel Brooks is hilarious. Young Frankenstein is my favorite of his movies. It's funny, it's impressive, it has a fun spoof to monster films, it's all sorts of excitement. I love the Muppets. All the great stuff in the Muppets, and I think the best of all of them would have to be the first movie of theirs, The Muppet Movie. It's lots of fun. Her is one of the most recent movies I've seen. It's got a unique premise about AI. Okay, it's not that unique, but it's interesting. I love Clint Eastwood and what stuff he comes up with. A nice conspiracy film about the shooting of JFK in The Line of Fire is a really good one. Comedy is all sorts of interesting. Superbad is probably one of the best comedies of the decade. It's funny, it's interesting, it's got that teen style to it, it's so much fun. And here we have another amazing comedy, Airplane. It's satirical, it's hilarious, it's so much fun to watch. I'll laugh every time. Here's a controversial movie. I am not anti-Semitic, I just love to hear the story of Jesus Christ in a new fashion, and Passion of the Christ does that pretty well. I also love the way The Princess Bride tells its story, as an actual bedtime story with some good comedy and some good romance involved in the mix. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Predator is one of his best works. It's exciting, fun action, fun Schwarzenegger moments, all that good stuff. Dune, like its sequel, Dune is exciting. It's got a new idea to it. It's always investing, always exciting. I think Dune just holds a place really well. Deadpool is definitely the funniest of all Marvel superheroes. With this movie being great, along with the other two, Deadpool is hilarious, and that's all I can say. Tom Cruise is interesting at playing protagonists, but what about antagonists? And that's where he comes in Collateral. He shows that he can play a villain pretty well. I think John Cusack is underrated. Say Anything is probably one of the most underrated movies I've seen. It's got a great romance to it, it's very heartfelt and satisfying at times. Of course, Trey Parker and Matt Stone. South Park is hilarious, and this movie's hilarious. It's also pretty interesting with all the puppetry that's done. Of course, the good old divorce story. Kramer vs. Kramer is not about the Seinfeld character, but about a fun divorce moment that can be interesting. Some old people in action. A movie where we get to see a bunch of old guys do some intense action is always a fun time for me. The Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger's first exciting movie, and definitely still one of his best. Pixar. You'll be seeing a lot of Pixar movies on this list. Monsters, Inc. is definitely one of the best ones, and there are so many of them. Tom Hanks and DiCaprio in Catch Me If You Can. Steven Spielberg, Chasing, True Story, Emotion, all that. Horror comedy is great, and this movie is no exception. Instead of the typical horror cliche, we get the typical horror cliche spoofed. The story of Sherlock Holmes. There's lots of ideas to it, and I think this one might be the best one in my opinion. I just love the performances and just all the stuff they go around it. And here we have the funniest movie ever made, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Hilarious, almighty, it's so exciting. Of course, we have the story of World War I, 1917, a movie I watched not to learn history, but to learn history and be entertained. Top Gun was a good movie. Top Gun Maverick improves on it in many ways, and I think the movie still holds up as a pretty amazing legacy sequel. Stanley Kubrick is a great director. He may have hard times, but he works well with his style, with Full Metal Jacket being one of those good examples. Shrek is a really great movie, but I think Shrek 2 definitely works better in many ways. It's got more comedy, more characters, more interesting ideas, and we all can agree on that. Hey look, more Kubrick. Clockwork Orange. It's a weird rape story, but honestly, I love how bizarre and mature movies can get, so I'm all for it. M. Night Shyamalan doesn't work all the time, but when he does do well, he can definitely make a great movie. Sixth Sense is that good example. Bruce Willis is great at action and comedy. And here we have a Christmas movie, Die Hard. Yes, it is a Christmas movie. I am not saying that as an opinion. More Pixar. Finding Nemo. It's so much fun. I think it fits the same category as all other Pixar movies. To Kill a Mockingbird. Never read the book. Don't think I was ever allowed to. But I did see the movie, and honestly, I think I've heard enough from how great this story is. Misery. Stephen King's made many great books, and here we have one of his best adaptations, a story that holds up really well and is still lots of fun. Keanu Reeves is a great action star, and honestly, this is probably his best work for me. Speed is cool, exciting, fun, bus, Thelma and Louise is a really great road trip film. It has a great story, great build-up, and a pretty awesome ending. Wes Anderson has an interesting style with his movies. Moonrise Kingdom is, to this day, for now at least, my favorite of his, but I still need to watch more of his movies, so it might change. More Stanley Kubrick, a movie that Stephen King himself despised, but honestly, I still love it. So, sorry King, your book is great, but this movie's also great. What is considered to be the greatest movie of all time is something that I personally think is just really great. It's still on this list, but it's not in the top 10, so I'm sorry. Oh, here we have one of the best sci-fi movies I've watched recently. Butterfly Effect has such an amazing idea to it. Even if it may be confusing, I still like it. Of course, probably the best written horror movie I've ever seen. Psycho is so well written. May not be the scariest movie ever, but it is certainly one of the best written ones. Alien is another movie that's really well put together. Its horror definitely was better, and it definitely can frighten me more. More jump scares, more intense stuff. It's all sorts of creepiness. Of course, what better movie to have than be about a hitman who's a good guy? I like those stories where they make someone who's supposed to be intense have a heart. It's always the best kind of people. Bruce Lee is probably one of the best martial arts ever, and he shows it off really well in Enter the Dragon. Martial arts is fun when it comes from people like him. Gladiator is great. I don't talk about the sequel when talking about this movie because I didn't care for the sequel, but I still love this movie. Still holds up great as a standalone. Jack Nicholson is a great actor, and this is probably the best way he can show it off. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is the best way we can see Jack Nicholson's acting skills. American Graffiti gives me all sorts of fun vintage ideas. Never was alive during this time, but I love seeing how it was with movies like this. Expendables is a pretty good film, but I think Expendables 2 is an amazing sequel. Honestly, something about this movie just looks so much more fun and exciting. Christopher Nolan is an amazing person to make these kind of weird, bizarre, intense stories. Inception is one of the best examples. Yeah, I know, it's people say this shouldn't exist, but it has to anyway, and honestly, it still is great for me, so I'm gonna say it. Terminator 2, among one of the best sequels of all time, is a sequel that I think holds up great and is definitely improved upon its original in many great ways. Yes, Back to the Future Part 2 does a great job as well. It may not predict the future accurately, but it does do a decent job, and it still works really well as a great sequel to an amazing trilogy. I used to think this movie was as great as the other movies in the trilogy, but now I wouldn't say that. Still though, it's an amazing film and concludes the trilogy pretty amazingly. Batman is an amazing superhero. He has a lot of great movies. It was one of the first ones, and believe me, it still is amazing. So Tim Burton, Michael Keaton, amazing. Steven Spielberg knocks it out of the park almost every time, and one of his best examples is, of course, E.T. Need I say more? Ocean's 11 is a fun idea that really gives me all sorts of entertainment. Love seeing when our protagonists are people that do something bad. Christopher Nolan has another great achievement. Oppenheimer, explosions, bombs, history. Works all amazingly in this film. Steven Spielberg's war film, Saving Private Ryan. I think him and Tom Hanks work so well that this movie proves it the best. Almost Famous is a fun idea that honestly gives me some sort of ideas I can focus on. It's one of those movies I like to pay attention to when I want to relate to it. Fast Times at Richmond High. An example of the fun 80s teen life that I never lived, but I always like to imagine would be like something like this. Oh, more Pixar. A fun emotional journey with amazing animation and just all around a great story. Some more teen 80s stuff. The Breakfast Club. Entire movie set in one room and works off of it in so many great ways. Yeah, I know people shit on this movie nowadays, but I don't care. I still think it works just as great as the first one. It may be problematic to some people, but I still love it. Rocky Balboa. Another amazing legacy sequel. Probably one of the best legacy sequels I've ever seen. It improves upon its predecessor in great ways, while still being a pretty great sequel. While granted the first Rocky movie is still better, it's got a great heartfelt message, some good lessons for boxing. It's definitely the definitive boxing movie. I'm more of a baseball guy though, and when it comes to baseball movies, Field of Dreams is the one I focus on the most. I just think it has the best baseball feel to it, and it tells the story the greatest. Yeah, I know, I don't want to sound too Gen Z, but honestly, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is the best one I've seen in cinema. Spider-Man is still my all-time favorite superhero, so yeah, Spider-Man movies like this, I always love to enjoy. More Pixar, Inside Out. It's an amazing movie with a great message and a good journey with creativity, just like its sequel that I will rate soon. Of course, more Christopher Nolan. One of the first movies he ever made, Memento, going backwards. Really feeling the great action and mystery involved with it. It just works so well. Toy Story 2 is a definitive Pixar sequel. It was a great sequel with a great message. It's great to watch for kids and amazing to watch for adults. That's something you can always enjoy. Stephen King's story of kids going on a journey adapted into an amazing film, Stand By Me. I'll watch this movie many times and still feel the message flowing through. It's a cliche romance movie to some people, but to me, Titanic is still amazing, and I still love the romance we get from it, as well as the drama every time. Another romance movie that people would argue has problems, I don't think so. I think this romance is so sweet, I think the whole movie is so wholesome, I think this movie can be fun to watch every time without questioning problems to it. The Incredibles, the fun Pixar superhero journey that is always a fun time to watch. I don't think I can really get tired of The Incredibles. It's exciting, it's interesting, it's got a lot of good stuff to it. It's a weird movie to talk about, but honestly, Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One is a unique kind of movie for me. It's got a really interesting style, it has a good idea with its VR experience, and I think they handle it pretty amazingly, I'll admit. Oh, here we have the second film in the Amazing Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's so much to this trilogy that just comes off as spectacular, and The Two Towers is definitely no exception. Oh, here we go. We've been through this movie so many times, and I'm still not tired of it. Avengers Infinity War is an epic movie that's epic in so many ways. It's exciting, interesting, and it's got a weird ending, but still great. Of course, here's the Avengers story that began it all. The first time we saw all these superheroes team up with each other for a journey that I didn't think I would love as much, but I did. Yes, MCU Spider-Man, it just hits me the best, I gotta say. I just think that Spider-Man Homecoming shows off Spider-Man in a very fun way compared to other movies, I'm gonna admit. Fight me. I'm sorry. I know people criticize it, but I'm sorry. I still think this movie is an amazing Star Wars film. Fight me. Animation never looked prettier, especially with 2D. The Lion King is a 2D animated movie that, honestly, I will always get heartfelt with. It's emotional, it's fun, it's got great music, it's everything. Steven Spielberg's most well put together movie, a movie that does everything right, doesn't miss the mark, is emotional in many ways. Schindler's List just hits me. Stanley Kubrick's most interesting movie, A Space Odyssey, the story of a weird space adventure in the future, a future that we didn't get, but we are still interested with. That's all I really can say. While I'm not the biggest fan of the sequels, the first Indiana Jones movie is still one I always enjoy watching. Yeah, I know, it's weird, but I just think this movie is just so great. Jaws, Steven Spielberg, I mean, come on. Everyone knows this movie. Everyone loves the idea, being afraid of the water, all that. Yes, the MCU Spider-Man gets to collaborate with other Spider-Man ideas. Many people want to criticize its over excessive fan service nonsense, but I think that nonsense is done really well here. One of the first times we get to see CG animation in its full form. Toy Story is revolutionary and is still as great to watch to this day. More Tom Hanks, Forrest Gump. The emotion, the drama, the fun, the idea of a man going for the century of such a heart. Can't get tired of it. And here we have the definitive superhero movie, The Dark Knight. This movie that everyone loves watching, everyone can enjoy. It's Christopher Nolan at his greatest. Toy Story 3 is the sequel that I always loved. A sequel that will always hold a heart to me. Among my favorite anime movie of all time, I think this movie will always work great for me. Steven Spielberg and Dinosaurs, a movie that I shouldn't love as much, but I do. I just think the idea is done so well here. It handles its property so amazingly. A comedy that also actually I can take seriously when it comes to what it does. Ghostbusters is still so amazing. I remember when I first watched it, I still think the movie is rewatchable and not something I can get tired of. And here we have Stephen King at his greatest. We have what is considered the greatest movie of all time. In a way, I honestly can't disagree. It's not my all-time favorite, but it's definitely close to it. It's still amazing. Back to the Future. The story of time travel. I love time travel, and I love the way it's represented in this movie. Definitely introduces time travel to so many great ideas. I think it's just a fun idea, and I think this movie handles it perfectly. The Lord of the Rings is something that everyone can enjoy. It's the fantasy, epic, adventure journey that defines cinema. All three of its movies did it, and this one did it just as well. The ultimate sci-fi adventure. Star Wars was incredibly revolutionary when it came out, and to this day is still amazing in all of its glory. Here we have the conclusion to the trilogy. A movie that is great at concluding things. It's long, but it's worth every minute. The Avengers. Yes, I don't want to sound too Gen Z for having this so high, but honestly, superhero journeys are fun when they have lots of great stuff to offer, which this movie does. I'll always be a Star Wars fan. This is definitely the best Star Wars movie, and it's still my all-time favorite. I don't think I'll ever get tired of Star Wars. I don't see how I can. So, I was probably talking super fast to where you couldn't understand me at times. You could try to turn on subtitles, but I don't think that'll be much help. Honestly, what I say didn't add much. You mostly can just watch the video and see it. Then again, you won't hear me if there's something you disagreed with, but come on, everyone agrees with this. My list is just as complicated as many others are. So, believe me, you cannot have a list of your favorite movies that everyone can agree on. So, if you disagree with my list, then that's normal. Okay? You can say all you want. I shouldn't have it like this. I'm not going to change my opinion just because other people think I'm crazy. I'm crazy because I want to do this to support 200 subscribers. But honestly, I'm just happy that I got this far. I didn't think I'd make it to 100 at any moment. But honestly, it's interesting that I did.